Hello, and welcome back to the Art Coaching Club podcast. I am your host, Haley White. I am an art coach. I am owner of the online art gallery, The Scouted Studio, and I'm an artist myself. And today, because of the timing, I am recording this in that in-between of Christmas, New Year's. I'm currently basically in pajamas. It's just that time of year. And I feel like I'm trying to somewhat get work done, but also allow myself to rest. But also I'm why do I feel so anxious? Probably because all I've done is eat 12 cookies and I haven't worked out in 2 weeks. So we're dealing with that right now. But what I'm really excited about to talk about today is just reflections and how to reflect on a year that maybe wasn't so perfect. So if you look back at, this past year and you were I didn't hit all my goals, or even if you hit, some goals, you just feel like things didn't fully align the way you wanted them to. I want to get into today how we can grow from that, and that the year didn't fail. You didn't, do anything wrong, but maybe you outgrew the version of yourself that planned it. And so what I'm going to really get into today is how we change from January of one year when we plan our goals to December of that year when we're going back and reflecting on those same goals. So we're going to talk through a lot about what change can happen over the course of the year. I'm going to get into my word of the year and how I really think about that as kind of a guiding light when it comes to success, if the year was successful or not, and just lots of other good stuff that I think is really important as we go into a season where a lot of people are talking about resolutions and goal setting and reflecting on goals, whether you feel like you are killing it and you are so on top of it, or if you feel like you're a little bit behind and you're what have I done wrong? I didn't hit my goals in 2025. Either way, this episode should be really grounding for you and hopefully really helpful. And we'll get into, the perspective of all of this. So a couple other announcements. The club is opening in January. It is opening. Spots will start to open on January 5th is when you can fully apply, but you can go ahead and apply to the interest list. So make sure you get your name on that if you just want more information, but you'll also be seeing stuff on socials and in your inbox. So that is definitely coming, which I'm very, very excited about. I have a very busy January for a very quiet, whatever this little 2-week time is. We have some really good interviews coming up the next couple of weeks. I also have some exciting Substacks coming out. So I know we took a little bit of a break, but we'll be getting back into all of that, the usual rhythm. So if you've been missing some content from me, we're about to get back into that regular cadence. So yeah, with all of that, I think that's most of my announcements. We can get into today's conversation. Something I talk to a lot of artists about this time of year is, when I do any type of goal setting for the next year, it's really big that we reflect on the year that has already happened. And what comes up sometimes is artists they really focus on where they fell short. So even if they hit 9 out of 10 goals, they're gonna focus on the one they didn't hit. And I'm the same way. It's literally how our brains work. We want to focus on that, but we shouldn't. And so first, I kind of want to get into this false narrative of falling short. And we got to release the shame of not hitting all our goals or not doing everything we wanted to do, whether that was we didn't hit one or we didn't hit any of them. So we're going to kind of think about that. I think what we're really taught, there's some importance in this, but we're taught to evaluate every year in terms of, did I cross the finish line? Did I hit the number? Did I hit the metric? Was the checklist checked off? All of those things. But this is really difficult for creatives because creative work evolves as you evolve. And so when I talk about setting goals as artists, I'm always really big on setting a business/financial goal, because I think that direction and that number to chase is important for growth. But I pair that with a visibility goal, so a way for you to grow. And that can look like being better at storytelling, it can look like working with a gallery, it can look like, that's kind of like an encapsulating marketing goal. But the third is the most important. I say you have to have a creative goal, and that's the one you've got to hit, because your creative goal drives everything else. And a creative goal could be something like, I actually want to be in my studio, 6 hours a week. And if I hit that, my work's going to be better. I'm going to have more to talk about. So the visibility goal is going to get hit. My income goal is more likely to get hit. Why am I talking about this? Because when artists talk about falling short, they focus on the income goal. They focus on the visibility goal. They didn't get enough followers. They didn't make enough money. And those things are important. Don't get me wrong. For those of you that are full-time artists, we have to make a living. But the core of it really does come down to, are you nurturing the work? Because when the work gets better, everything else follows. And I would say that this year, I wrote a whole Substack article about how I've added just under $20,000. It might be at $20,000 now in art sales in 2025. And it's partially because of a lot of stuff, read Substack. But to bring it into this, it's because I actually spent time on my creative work. Like I actually had a creative goal and I focused on it. And I found a style and I found a niche and it led to all these other things. So what I want to get back to is, if you're an artist who feels like you fell short in 2025, reflect on why you feel that way. Is it because of these hard goals? Or is it because you're not focusing enough on maybe the creative milestones you've really hit? I mean, I think it's so big to do a reverse bucket list, write down everything you accomplished in 2025. It might surprise you. So first, I just want to kind of get rid of this false narrative of falling short. I don't want you to say, I should have done more, other people made it work. Other people seem to have more hours in the day. Like, I just want to get rid of that. But I think that's where I want us to start today. I want us to start with, you did a lot and it's okay that you didn't do more. Falling short isn't failure. Falling short of this goal you set in January isn't failure. Sometimes it's misalignment. And that's what I want to talk about today. Resistance isn't always laziness. Not hitting a goal doesn't mean you didn't work hard enough. Sometimes it's actually you're being pulled in a different direction. And often that's the case. So if something, requires like a constant force, like a constant misalignment, like a certain goal, maybe that's some information we need to take into this next year. So I want to start with really reflecting back. Think about, if you do feel like you fell short, who was the version of you that made those plans? So if you're like, I set all these goals in January of 2025, it's now, December. Think about, who were you when you set those goals? I'm actually really big on my calendar planning. This is a new shift I'm doing. I'm doing my calendar planning in December. Because when am I the most exhausted? December. When I try to set my calendar January 1, I'm like gung-ho. I'm like, yeah, let's hit the ground running. Do your calendar planning, do your goal setting in December, because you'll be more realistic. I want you to start, getting back on track here. I want you to think about the version of you who made those plans, who set those goals. Imagine yourselves, let's say it was last January. What did you believe about success then? And how is it different than now? Did you assume you'd have more energy for something and you didn't? Did your situations change? I mean, I know some artists who have moved, who are now homeschooling their kids, who have changed jobs, who are, doing all these different things. If that's you, those are forces that are pulling you away from who you were in January, and that is okay. So I really want you to think about, who were you then? What did you think you had energy for then? What did you think you should want then? And understand that you didn't have all the data that would come at you in the year. You're predicting the way the year is going to go. Therefore, you're predicting goals based on those predictions. You made the best decisions. You set the best goals based on what you knew at the time. But you're smarter. You know your business better. You're in better shape now to reflect on those goals and maybe why some of them didn't work. You planned those goals that year assuming you would blank. You were surprised because of blank. What you couldn't have known then was what? Sit with those questions. And now let's continue on. A year never fails. Even if you hit 0% of your goals, because believe me, I don't hit all my goals every year. That's like not normal. If you hit all your goals every year, you're aiming too low. I'm just going to put that out there. Years don't fail, they educate. Every time I don't hit something, I learn. And usually I learn we got to pivot, or I actually wasn't that excited about that, or why was I putting all this energy into hitting 5,000 followers on social media when I hate social media? I want you to think about your year. I want you to think about the areas you didn't do well in your own eyes and say to yourself, you gained information. You didn't lack discipline. You didn't do something wrong. You gained information. The year actually taught you how long things really take. What kind of visibility drains you versus fuels you. For example, maybe making reels and being on your phone all day drains you. It absolutely drains me. That's why I batch work and I do them all on like Monday and then I don't look at them again. But what fuels you? Maybe shows fuel you. Maybe shows drain you. Maybe galleries fuel you. Take in that data and carry it into your goal setting and your planning for this year. Which income streams feel sustainable? That can be commissions. Maybe they don't, and maybe we move away from them. Or maybe you're getting so many interior designers wanting commissions from you. Like, let's lean into that and take some of the pressure off being with galleries. Not every income stream is a good thing, even if things are selling. I tell artists that a lot. I was talking to one artist and she worked with like 10 galleries, but when we looked at her numbers, 1 to 2 of them were making 80% of her profits. And I was like, I know this is going to be scary for you, but say no to those other galleries. You're spending as much time with them, if not more. If you double down on the things that are really working, think how much you can make. Think how much time you would have back. So I really want you to think about what income streams feel sustainable, which ones don't. How much rest do you truly need? As artists, we need rest. We need white space in our calendar. We need white space in our days to be creative. You cannot come up with a creative idea if you don't have time to play, if you don't have time to like sit and stare at the wall. I mean, the amount of time in art school we would step back from our paintings and just stare at them. You need rest. So make sure that is built in and understand this is your new curriculum. Going into this year, I want you to still have goals. I want you to still strive for stuff, but I want you to take the data that you have from last year and carry it into this year. What didn't work? Analyze why it didn't work, and then carry that into, okay, how are we going to make a year that works even better in 2026? And understand that not everything is going to work in 2026 either. This is an evolution. I'm in, oh gosh, I think this will be my 7th year of business. I mean, I've been doing this for a decent amount of time, a decent portion of my life now. And I still feel like every year I'm figuring it out. You're always going to be learning. And if you go in with that mentality, it's going to make your quote unquote failures feel less like failures. What I want to get into with all of that is I have a word of the year. And I'm going to run you through some of the ones I've had in the past, why I've had them, and how they've helped me actually evaluate my goals and things that come up at the end of the year. So, right now, if you're thinking like, I just did not do well in 2025, did you set a word of the year? You probably didn't because I'm introducing this now, but maybe you did. Sometimes I'll look at my year and I'll say, okay, I didn't hit this goal, but I didn't hit it and it's okay because I was still in line with my word of the year. So I'm going to walk through these so you maybe have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. But there's no frame around how you have to do a word of the year, if you have to do a word of the year, but it's just like a direction. And that for me is really helpful. So I'm going to go back I can only remember, and I think I only started it in 2023. So we're going to start with 2023. My word was expand. We were coming off of kind of COVID, the trickle down of COVID, what all of that craziness looked like. And for me, what expand meant was I wanted to work with more artists across the board with all my different businesses. I wanted more ideas, more visibility, more possibility, more income. I wanted to expand in all ways. And it showed up as saying yes to a ton of things, trying new formats. I think that was when I signed a lease maybe, or we moved, there was so many moving pieces. But what the word expand taught me in 2023 and how I felt at the end of the year, the goals I hit, the goals I didn't, was I have capacity. I have edges. I need to set boundaries. Expansion was necessary. It helped me grow my business, but it revealed what I couldn't do forever. And so 2024's year, this is I'm listening to this back and I'm like, duh, this is why this happened. 2024's word was rest. And that was an active choice. It was one I didn't do very well. 2024 actually introduced so many opportunities to me that were wonderful that I didn't rest. And so I actually failed on that word. And I think in failing on what I needed, which I knew was rest, I hit some goals, but I really failed on others because I wasn't giving myself what I needed. It was shiny object syndrome. A great opportunity would come up, and instead of reflecting and saying, is this worth my time, or should I be, resting and kind of sitting back with what I have, I would jump on the opportunity, which would make something else kind of fall by the wayside. So I actually was not in alignment with the word rest, and that led to actually why a lot of things didn't work. What I wanted rest to look like was, pulling back, simplifying some of my things, protecting my energy, not starting a new business every 5 minutes, which is what I felt like I did in 2023. It's hard because rest doesn't look productive from the outside, but as creatives, it's so important to what we do, and we have to remind ourselves of that. And that's something I remind myself of every day. So it was something I didn't do very well, and that actually came through in the way the year ended. My year 2025, I loved this one, the word refine. I love the word refine. I think if you're in the club, you probably hear me say it all the time. I probably say it on this podcast a lot, but we're not shrinking. We're not making the business smaller. We're refining everything we do. So every time I make a decision, I'm like, okay, would I buy that? Would I learn from that? Would I like that? Like we were out of this expansion, throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what sticks. We're beyond the, okay, I did that. We're in the, okay, now I kind of know what works and what doesn't. How can we make it better? How can I make this the best platform for artists? How can I be coaching in the best way possible? How can I make the podcast as good as it is? And that was something that through refining, I don't know how much of it was seen from the outside. That would have been my word of the year. But I think as I say that, there's probably things that are like, oh yeah, she did do that, or she did kind of change those things. And for me, refine meant a lot of reinvesting. It was a lot of reinvesting in the business, reinvesting in myself, reevaluating. If things weren't working, we had to take it off the plate. Also spending, like, my collection launches, we were refining. I was not just randomly putting my own artwork on the website, which is what I was doing before, and haphazardly saying yes to commissions. I did 3 launches. I did Reading Girls 1, Reading Girls 2. My After Midnight's collection had, those photographed. They were full-blown launches. I refined my process. I did things better, and I want to carry that into next year as well. What refinement really brought out for me was fewer is better, which, I knew, but I didn't actually believe. I was setting clearer boundaries. I had a stronger identity. I was understanding my prices. I had to raise my prices. As I say to all of you guys all the time, refinement follows expansion and rest very naturally. And it was just kind of like a maturity thing for me. It was like my business is at a certain point where it needs to mature to this next level, and I need to take a year to do that. It's not going to happen overnight. You can't raise your prices overnight. You can't do this overnight. You can't rebrand overnight. You can't have great photos overnight. You can't step into who you need to be overnight. So, it wasn't about being less ambitious. It was about becoming more precise, and it really took a year to do that. And I think I stepped into that word really well last year. So getting you into this year's word, and the reason I'm sharing all of these is not to take you down my whole life story, but is to share them so you can think about what your word is. Think about where you are in your business, what your word needs to be, what's going to be really powerful for you. And my word of the year this year is trust. And what I mean by that is it's about trusting my instincts, trusting my pace, trusting I can say no when I say yes, trusting my gut, trusting things will work out, trusting my work without feeling like I need to over-explain it, even what I do. I mean, I think a lot of the times I'm like, oh, I'm an artist, or oh, I do this. The way we all get is trusting ourselves and really stepping into that confidence. To contrast this with how I was before, it's less proving. It's less feeling like, oh, I need to prove that I'm worthy of doing this. It's like stepping out of that imposter syndrome, less forcing, and more just internal confidence, internal authority, saying, you know what, I am going to trust my gut. It's gotten me this far. I've been in business however long. See earlier in the episode. But I've been in business long enough. I'm at a point where I should trust my gut. I should trust my prices. I should trust the artists I'm working with, that, they've worked with me long enough. I'm probably doing something right. So this word of the year is trust. And I think what's going to come out of that is kind of the 3 things that have been words in the past. I think through trusting my own instinct and trusting things are going to work out, I think it's also going to allow me to rest, because I'm going to trust myself in knowing when I need it. And I think it's going to allow me to continue to refine, because again, I'm trusting that inner belief, that inner gut feeling of when things are right and when things need to be matured and taken to the next level. So trust for me is believing I don't actually need to force outcomes to be worthy of them. It's, I am doing this. I'm going to do it well, but I'm going to do it in my own way and trust that that's going to work. So I really want you to think about, what do you want your year to look like? Who are you now? So don't think about what do you want to accomplish. That's goal setting. I want you to think about, who are you now? Think about your energy, your desire, your capacity, and encourage, yourself to really understand where you are right now in your life and what do you want from this business. And is it expansion? Is it trusting yourself? Is it, obviously I'm using my own words, please come up with something different. There's probably something that's a much better fit for you, but really reflect on that. And I don't expect you to listen to one podcast episode and have it come out, but there might be a word that continues to come up for you, or it's continuing to come up in your vocabulary. That's what refine was for me. I was just using that word all the time. And I'm like, there's something there. So really think about, not just what you accomplished, what you didn't, not just the numbers, not just the hard goals. Think about, who do you want to be? How do you want to feel? What does success look like for you? What does success look like for you all the way around, in your personal life, in your creative life, in your professional life? What does that look like? And what word encapsulates that? And then you can start to say, okay, are my goals aligned with that larger feeling, that larger goal? So I really want you to think about, what is your word for the year? I'd love if you'd share it. Feel free to, Hudson's popping in to say hi. I would love for you to share it with me on social media, the Art Coaching Club, on Instagram or wherever you follow, because I love hearing what other people are thinking. Lisa Ann Tyndall, wonderful Substack, and she kind of wrote about some things in her word for the year. I recommend reading that if you follow her. So just lots of good stuff there, but definitely want you guys to all think about that, because I think it's really important to have a way to navigate if we are not reaching our goals, why that's okay, but also having a system to learn from it. So just to close, I want you to take a moment and really ask yourself, if you felt behind at the beginning of this episode, do you feel a little bit less behind now? Do you have the tools you need to learn from the things that maybe didn't totally work out this year? Can you acknowledge the things that did? Because I think that's equally, if not more important. And understand that every year is going to be messier than we expect. Every year, it's never goes as planned. We do not know what's coming. So I always think about my goals as evolving. I set a goal, and if they are not working, it is okay to pivot. We can't be that rigid. We are created. It does not work for us. So your goals didn't expire. They evolved. And finally, you don't need to punish yourself for not reaching your goals. You don't need to punish yourself to move forward. You don't need to start over. You don't need to rethink your whole business because things didn't work out last year. You just need to plan from reality. You need to look at your year. You need to look at what worked. You need to look at what didn't. And you need to make decisions off that. If something was working really well, double down on it. And you liked it, really double down on it if you didn't like it. If something wasn't working, understand why. If you understand why things didn't hit, why you didn't reach goals, why things aren't working, and you can learn from that, that's running a business. You've got it. So I know this is a little bit of a shorter episode. I know it's a solo episode, but I just think this is really important. I think this is a really important thing to tune into at this time of year. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday season. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. We are kicking it off with some amazing interviews, and I'll be sprinkling in solo episodes as well in 2026. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. Have a wonderful, restful rest of your week, depending on when you're listening to this, and hopefully this was helpful. I will talk to you guys soon.